What's going on, everybody? It's Rurowaija, and welcome back to another episode of Sleeper Sunday. Sleeper Sunday, for those of you that don't know, is a series I came up with showcasing fun hidden decks you may not know about that can deal quite a bit of damage in the proper hands. We'll be going over a basic deck list, strengths, weaknesses, what can be done to make the deck better, and of course, if you replay, see the deck in action. In today's episode, we're going to be going over the winner of this month's poll, Meklord. Boy. So Meklord is an archetype of machine monsters released in Extreme Victory in 2011, which was actually their only universally released set, with their one wave of support being put in different sets for both the TCG and OCG, with the TCG at least getting their support in Rage of Ra in 2020. They're sort of a beatdown focused strategy with no extra deck cards. In fact, their whole gimmick is actually being specifically tailored, I put that in quotes actually, to take down synchro monsters as the 5Ds era came to a close. Also, I guess they were using the anime by 3 different dudes that combine. I don't know, dude, I don't watch the shows. And for another little fun fact before we get into the actual deck, this was probably the worst archetype ever on Sleeper Sunday, and I don't know why you bastards made me play this. Now to actually dive into the deck itself, starting off we have Meklord Nucleus Infinity Core. This card is a level 1 that says the first time it will be destroyed by battle each turn, it is not destroyed. It can only use each of the following effects once per turn. If it's normal or special summon, you can add 1 Meklord spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and if it's destroyed by card effect, you can special summon 1 Meklord Emperor monster from your hand or deck with a different attribute than the ones you currently control, ignoring its summoning conditions, but for the rest of the turn, you can only declare an attack with 1 monster. So, Infinity Core is actually one of the only, decent cards in the archetype. Ignore the battle protection, I genuinely just completely didn't know until I read it just now that it actually had that, because it never comes up, that's the funny thing. But the other effects are actually really good. So the card you're going to be adding is basically a card that will pop it and trigger the effect every time. So you are guaranteed to get access to a Meklord Emperor if you resolve the effect. It is one of 2 very good starter cards, and I guess probably the best starter card because the other one doesn't really start you into the main chunk of the deck, it just happens to do stuff, but this is the bread and butter best card in the entire deck. Their other best normal summon also happens to be from their wave of support, being Meklord Army Deployer Obligato. It's a level 4 machine with 1200 attack, 1800 defense, not like it really matters because typically it's going to be immediately offing itself with its first effect. It says during your main phase you can activate this effect, destroy this card, and if you do, special summon 2 Meklord Army monsters from your deck in defense position, except Obligato. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn, except machine monsters. If it's sent to the graveyard, you can activate this effect during the end phase of this turn, inflict 100 damage to your opponent for each Meklord monster you control. You can only use each effect of Obligato once per turn. Completely ignore the second effect, I literally think I resolved it for 200 damage, maximum, 1 point. And it didn't matter. I completely forgot I even activated it. I mostly just use it as a chain block. I think that's the biggest thing about it, is that you can chain block stuff with it. And it does get to trigger off of its own effect. Also, the army monsters that it summons, I'm going to go ahead and just mention right now, because Wizel, Granel, and Skeel actually do, nothing, especially because this summons them in defense, which is horrendous because they all have attack gain effects. I don't know, it just feels like this archetype is completely fighting each other all the time, or fighting itself. But Obligato does get 2 level 4 machine bodies on board, which is super great for making things like Iron Wolf, and Iron Wolf allows you to go into some really cool Zeus plays, which at least allows you to help break boards a little bit, and of course it'll put a bunch of Meklords in your graveyard for you to access their boss monster, or one of their boss monsters, the only good one at least, Meklord Astro Dragon Triskelion. As a level 10 machine with 3000 attack and 0 defense, it cannot be normal summoned or set and must first be special summoned from your hand by banishing 3 Meklords with different names from your graveyard. Once per turn, when it declares an attack, you can look at your opponent's extra deck and equip 1 monster from it to this card. This card gains attack equal to the combined attack of those equipped monsters, and while equipped with a synchro monster, it can make up to 3 attacks on monsters during each battle phase. So if Nucleus is the best starter card in the deck, this is probably the follow-up for just the best card period in the deck. Triskelion is, of course, the big end goal of the Meklord package itself. You're going to try to use Infinity Core to add the thing that adds the Triskelion, which will allow you to punch for some pretty decent damage and also disrupt your opponent's extra deck, which is pretty solid. I just don't like that it has no protection or anything like that, or disruption. It's just a really big attacking body, and it doesn't even get to OTK most of the time, unless it's a synchro specifically, which is kind of annoying. But by equipping things from the extra deck, not only again are you disrupting your opponent in that regard, card, but it's also going to be able to take down basically anything in the game, so it's pretty decent removal if you can spare your battle phase. Meklord Emperor Wiesel says it cannot be normal summoned or set, must be special summoned by its own effect, except for when you summon it off of Infinity Core, because why would you summon off its own effect 90% of the time? It does come up sometimes, though. It says when a face-up monster you control is destroyed by a card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it from your hand. Other monsters you control cannot declare an attack, and once per turn you can target one synchro monster your opponent controls, equip that target to this card, and it gains attack equal to it, similar to Triskelion. But finally, it says once per turn when your opponent activates a spell card quick effect, you can negate the activation if you do destroy it. This is actually not a terrible card, simply because it has that spell negation. Otherwise, it's kind of I mean, 2500 attack is okay for a beater, especially because it can equip certain things to make itself bigger, but considering that it can only equip synchro monsters and only from the opponent's field, it isn't gonna get very large, and that's not great for a monster that wants to be the only attacker on your field. And very frequently you'll actually get 2 Wiesel on field, which is why we're playing 2 copies, because the thing that can add Triskelion can also add the Wiesel if you're going first instead, or if you don't have enough gas to go for the Triskelion, you can go like a core, add this adds this, and then this pops this summons 1, and it summons itself as Chainlink 2. Therefore, you can get 2 Wiesels on board and get a free double spell negate, which is not terrible, assuming your opponent draws multiple spells, and serves as basically the only real disruption searchable, at least, that this deck can actually put up. Granel is kind of just there because he can get kind of big, because he has the same summoning conditions, same equipping conditions, etc., but it also gains attack and defense equal to half your life points and the equipped attack, so basically he's going to start off as a free 4k beater, which is pretty cool, especially because this one, for some reason, doesn't restrict other dudes from attacking. Also, instead of a spell negate, it can special summon the monster that's equipped to it, which is kind of cool if your opponent like synchro summons something properly and then you steal it and then you can summon it, especially if it's something with like an okay disruption, like, I don't know, Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend, I guess. But Granel is like probably better than Wiesel going second, at least, unless you're scared of like Sky Striker, I guess, like Widow Anchors and shit, because it can actually not only be a 4k body, but it doesn't have the audacity to say other monsters you control can't attack. Maybe that was just like a misprint, maybe this card was supposed to, because it's almost always going to be bigger than Wiesel, but I don't know, this card is just better. Already mentioned the Meklord armies being kind of terrible and you never resolve their effects ever. We are playing 1 copy of Regulus just because, I mean, it's Regulus. You're playing a machine deck and it's a high-level machine monster. We're not playing really any way to search it or anything like that. We could probably play like a Foolish Burial Goods Clockwork Knight engine if we were that desperate. But fun fact, I don't think I actually ever summoned it in any of my test games on the stream. We have a few hand traps now that I've sorted them together at least a little bit. 3 Nib, 3 Ash, 3 Imperm. These are kind of like a product of their time, essentially, because I had this list like kind of put together, but funnily enough, this is my exact hand trap lineup that I'm playing in my current modern deck, so, I mean, history really does repeat itself. We also have 1 copy of 1-for-1 sitting here. That probably should have been like a little bit later, but this is to summon, of course, the Infinity Core. You can't really summon the Wiesel or Granel with it, but summoning an Infinity Core, especially if you can also normal summon Obligato, feels chef's kiss. 3 copies of Meklord Assembly. Assembly says on activation, you can add a Meklord monster from deck to hand. You can only activate 1 per turn. You can only use each of the following effects once per turn. You can discard 1 card to target a monster you control and destroy it, typically Infinity Core, to summon your Wiesel. And if a face-up Meklord you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, its own effect, you can target one other face-up spell or trap on the field and destroy it. This card is really good because you're going to go Infinity Core to add this, and this will be able to add either your Triskelion or your Wiesel for the combos that I mentioned before, and then you can pop the core, trigger its effect, and then I guess if your opponent has a face-up spell or trap, this is really good, but I wish it just popped any spell or trap. There's like no reason to have restricted it like that, especially because it's not like you really have anything that would want, like, on your end to float like that. Oh, I'm sorry, I guess they had Meklord Fortress that allows itself to add a Meklord Emperor from deck to hand. So yeah, it could be slightly better, but I still think it is one of the better cards in the deck. We're also playing 1 copy of Meklord Deflection. It's a quick play that says target a Meklord you control. Your opponent takes no battle damage from attacks involving it until the end of this turn, but its attack becomes permanently the combined original attack of all Meklord monsters you currently control. And if a Meklord monster you control be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish it from your grave instead. I mostly like it for the second effect because it's like actual protection in an archetype with a big Oonga Boonga glass cannon beat stick. But the first effect isn't like terrible. It's pretty funny if you manage to get a double Emperor Triskelion or something on board like that. so that you can have like a 5,000 attack dude that can gain even more attack, and it can basically out literally anything at that point. But again, it's kind of for the second effect a lot of the time, because you do have things that discard, such as the Meklord Assembly. We're also playing 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. This actually is a blind second deck, and funnily enough, again, this is exactly the card that there's the same 12 non-engine lineup that I'm playing, 13 if you count the Called By, in my current modern Goblin Fiendsmith deck, which is pretty funny. But yeah, Droplet feels pretty solid in this deck because you really want to lower the stats of things and negate their effects without using something like Dark Ruler that prevents you from killing. We have 1 copy of Meklord Astro the Eradicator. It says target 3 Meklords with different names in your grave, add them to your hand, or special them ignoring the summoning conditions. Until the end of your next turn after this card's activated, you cannot special except for machine monsters. If you control a Meklord Astro monster, you can banish it from your grave and destroy 1 synchro monster your opponent controls, and if you do inflict damage to your opponent equal to its original attack. This card sometimes comes up, and by sometimes I mean I never activated it, but I know in certain like situations it can come up, being basically just an easy way to put 3 walls on your board. And the second effect, if you are playing against a synchro deck, is pretty funny, but again, I kind of just wish it like worked on any monster bare minimum, because this is part of the second wave, like come on, from 2020. So I would have liked to see like a little bit more genericism in that, but I don't know, this card's still okay. It's not quite a Meklord card, but it might as well be. We have 3 Machina Defense Perimeter. It says while you control a level 7 or higher machine monster, opponent's monsters cannot target level 6 or lower machine monsters you control for attacks. Also, your opponent cannot target them with card effects. Very good in case you aren't able to OTK, but you do have like Triskelion and like Wizel and stuff on board to protect them. But also, if a face-up machine you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target 1 machine monster in your grave and add it to your hand. This is very, very good in situations like in a grind game, because you can go for your core assembly play to pop the core, but that also triggers the perimeter, and you can grab something back like, say, a spent Triskelion, which is really, really good, because we are only playing the 1 copy, and so if this dies, then we kind of run out of like our big game plan. So if we can add this back, it is pretty good. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, I tested a couple different packages and engines on the stream, but unfortunately the one that performed the best was the Fiendsmith package. I know everyone's like sick of the Fiendsmith stuff, ooh, big deal, whatever, and it kind of does like overwhelm the like the whole game plan of the Meklord stuff, but it's like the only way to actually push through disruptions and then use your Meklord stuff, which is really good, by the way, if you're able to set up like Desiree and Triskelion. That's basically game. But it's also really good at giving you something to do going first when your opponent forces you to, which we actually got forced to go first like almost 5 times or something on stream, which was pretty crazy. That's it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, we have 1 copy of Dugaris. Dugaris actually never came up, but the idea of doubling the attack of a Triskelion and then equipping something from the opponent's extra deck and getting even bigger is pretty funny, especially if you do manage to get that synchro monster, of course. We have the 1 copy of Iron Wolf, which is basically a direct attacker that allows you to actually get a lot of damage in because it targets any machine you control, but it's mostly there to go into Zeus. We are playing 1 copy of Gustav and Liebe because we could technically put out multiple level 10s at the time, but now that I think about it, this card actually can't even come up anymore because I'm not playing the double Triskelion, so kind of funny to think about. These cards are kind of just there for fodder. You can totally cut them for something else. Unless you want to play like Dreadnought Dreadnoid instead of Iron Wolf, which is totally a possibility. We are playing, of course, the Fiendsmith stuff. We have the 1 Moon that goes into the Requiem, that goes into the Sequence, Agnum Day, Desiree, or you can go Necroquip or Caesar. We have 1 copy of SP because it's a good card, and 1 copy of Anima because we are playing quite a few level 1 monsters, which is pretty good, and Anima is a very fantastic card, especially after you nib an opponent. As always, moving on to the cards that we don't play from the archetype, we have Meklord Astro Mechanical, which was supposed to be their like big boss monster. I think it's like the fusion one or something in the anime. Can't be normal summoned or set, and must be special summoned from your hand by sending 3 Meklords from your hand to the graveyard. Once per turn, you can target a synchro monster your opponent controls and equip it to this card. It gains attack equal to it, of course, and it starts with 4,000 attack and defense, which is pretty cool. Once per turn during your standby phase, you can send 1 of those equipped monsters to the graveyard and to inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack, but you cannot conduct your battle phase the turn you activate this effect. I can see the idea of the card, and if you can pull it off, it's probably pretty good. The problem is the summoning condition is really bad because it means you have to play a bunch of dog shit Meklord monsters in your deck just to discard, and also it specifically, again, works only on synchro monsters, and I get that. I did say the point of the archetype was to like fight the synchros and stuff like that, kind of like how Allied Justice fights the light monsters and stuff. but as we saw from Ally of Justice, that's fucking terrible. So you don't really want to summon this guy literally ever. And the same can be said about Meklord Astro Dragon Asterisk, who happens to be even worse. He must first be special summoned by controlling 3 or more Meklord monsters, good luck with that on an average turn, and when it's special summoned you can target any number of Meklords you control except this card, send those targets to the graveyard, and if you do, this card's attack becomes a combined original attack of those monsters, and each time a synchro monster is special summoned, inflict 1000 damage to the summoning player. So this asshat requires you not only to control 3 or more Meklord monsters, which have a hard enough time swarming that many monsters on top of having their boss monster in hand at the same time anyway, but he wants those guys to immediately die, making him probably barely 3 to 4,000 attack on a good day. But it also has like a terrible burn effect that won't come up unless you go exactly first against exactly Synchron or something, and even then, chances are by the time they're ready to die that you can just kill it with something, because again, none of these boss monsters have protection, and I just hate how terrible these boss monsters are, man. Meklord Emperor Skeel is the only old Emperor we don't play. I know some people do play it. It says you can send a monster controller that's equipped to it to the grave to make it able to attack directly this turn, but I don't think that really matters. I mean, like, why would you do that over having a really massive Granel that can punch over stuff, or a Wizel that can negate spells? Like, and this guy doesn't even get the equip most of the time because, again, they have to equip Synchro monsters, and so they're bad. And I've seen some lists straight up play this, sometimes even at 2, and I'm like, why? Also, the other Meklord Emperor we don't play is a newer one called Meklord Emperor Wizel Synchro Absorption, who has no fucking name of the word Synchro in its text. At all. It cannot be normal summoned or set, must first be special summoned by its own effect. During your opponent's turn quick effect, you can set a face-up Meklord you control to the graveyard, especially from your hand. You can only use this effective Meklord whatever once per turn. If it's special summoned, you can target one monster your opponent controls. It cannot attack for the rest of this turn, and when a card or effect is activated, they'll destroy a card in the field. Quick effect, you can tribute this card and negate the activation if you destroy that card. I don't think I have to explain why this card just sucks so much ass. I hate it so much. So, you're playing an OTK deck, and a dude called Synchro Absorption not only doesn't absorb Synchros in the Synchro Absorbing archetype, like he's the only one that doesn't absorb Synchros, but he can only summon in the opponent's turn, must kill a dude to do it, sending, by the way, not even popping, so you can't even trigger something like Perimeter or Core or anything like that, is Sky Striker Ace Kaina for some reason, and the protection effect doesn't matter. Like, this is the only protection in the archetype, and it fucking sucks. I hate this card so much. It's so bad. I don't know why they ever came up with this. This is not the archetype to put this effect in. Moving on to their older cards, we have Boon of the Meklord Emperor. I'm pretty sure most of you probably already know these cards, by the way, from Rank 10 Yu-Gi-Oh! And you already know why they're bad, but I'm just going to go over them anyway quickly. If the only face-up monster in the field are 2 Meklord monsters, draw 2 cards and skip your battle phase. Terrible. Reboot, shuffle a Meklord from your hand to the deck, then target a Meklord card in your graveyard, add to the hand. Not the worst card in the world, but it'd be better if it, like, shuffled from grave into the deck and then added one from grave to hand or something like that. I don't know. The Resolute Meklord Army protects attack position Meklord Army monsters by battle, but negates their effects. This is like that one Battery Man card, but, like, even worse. Meklord Fortress. Neither player can target Meklord Emperor monsters you control with Synchro effects, and when it's popped, you can add a Meklord Emperor from deck to hand, so get that assembly value, kings. Or emperors, I should say. Fortissimo, the Mobile Fortress, says once per turn you can special a Meklord Army from your hand. I don't need to explain how bad these Meklord Army cards are. The Meklord Armies are the worst part of the archetype, seriously. Trap cards, we have Chaos Infinity. Change as many defense position monsters in the field as possible to face up attack position. Then special a Meklord monster from your deck or graveyard, but its effects are negated, also destroyed during the end phase. This card could have been so fucking funny if it was a spell card, because then you could get instant access to certain stuff while also forcing your opponent to not be able to protect themselves, which is one of the problems with Triskelion, because even if you do equip a Synchro, what if all their dudes are in defense? You know, like, you're gonna punch over them and kill them, yeah, but you can't kill the opponent. So this would have been really funny if it was a spell, but it is not. Mech Time Blast I thought was a good card because it says target a Meklord monster you control and a card your opponent controls and destroy them. I was like, cool, that's a disruption, so I played one, and then I realized, oh, that's not a Meklord card, that is a Mech Timed card, so you can't even search it off of Infinity Core, so it immediately left the moment I realized that. Meklord Factory says when a Meklord monster on the field is targeted for an attack, target a Meklord Army monster in your grave, add it to your hand, then destroy the attack target. Why? It adds a dude from your grave to your hand, one of the worst dudes in the archetype, and kills the monster on your field, not the monster attacking your guy. It kills your monster. This archetype is just fighting itself constantly. Oh my god. Oh man, moving on to the non-Meklord cards, I wanted to cook something up with Clockwork Knight because I thought it would be really cool because this can go into the Clockwork Knight and it adds a continuous spell that you could in theory send off of the Clockwork Knight to add a Clockwork, Knight from deck to hand, but the problem is that this has to stay on the field to get the discard, which would have been the easiest way to discard Clockwork Knight. I mean, I guess technically you could still play Clockwork Knight in the main deck to, like, add Regulus or something like that, or Granel, I guess. But I really wanted to find a combo with that. I couldn't personally, but if anyone in the comments can actually figure out a really cool combo with the Clockwork Knight cards and Infinity Core and stuff, that'd be awesome. I really want to try it out. And then finally we have Gigant X, which again can add like a whole major realm of splashability with the rest of the archetype, honestly. There's just so many possibilities you could do with it because it adds any level 4 or lower machine from your deck or graveyard, and Obligado sets up a guaranteed rank 4 machine for you, so I would really like to explore some sort of realm with that. The only thing that it can really add in this deck that would be worth it is like a core if you have a way to summon it somehow, or I guess Wisel or Granel if you have a way to pop your dude, which is like okay, but I do want to see what this card can do. Well, that's going to do it for the actual deck list itself. I guess I'm going to go ahead and get onto the replays. I'm just going to give you a heads up now, there are probably only going to be 2 of them, and I only win in 1, so if that doesn't tell you how good this deck is, then I don't know what will, but with that being said, I'll see you when they're done. Well, I guess I lied about a couple things. There was 3 replays, because I completely forgot about the poor innocent vampire player that didn't know he could link into Almirage or something, I guess. So that was like the freest one ever. But I did really enjoy that Ryziel Heraldic match. I thought it was actually really, really fun. But I also really thought it was cool the way they used the gigantic Schneider card or whatever it was, the big sword thing, because that was actually the thing that completely killed me. And I guess I also lied in that regard about not using Regulates, because they came up not once but twice. Machina Defense Perimeter being able to add it back is pretty cool. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the strengths and weaknesses. Strengths, none, weaknesses, everything. Bye. End of Sleeper Sunday. No, but jokes aside, starting off with these strengths, it does have access to 1-card combos in the form of Infinity Core and Obligato. These days, of course, 1-card combos are basically all the rage, and I'll admit that a double spell negate off a core normal summon is pretty neat, if not a bit specific, but you can usually back it up with either the Fiendsmith engine or some non-engine, or you can just straight up use the core to go into the Fiendsmith engine by going into the Moon combo. Their modern back row is also actually pretty good. Assembly lets you do what your archetype wants to do with the destruction, clears out some back row, though only face up for some reason, and of course acts as a consistency piece, and deflection can help in the odd occasion you can't beat over something, and more importantly functions as protection in the graveyard. Finally, as you can clearly see, the simplicity of the playable main deck cards allows for a lot of splashability, and I'm certain there's some machine archetypes that do better and work well with Obligato's lock more importantly, but as you can see here, Fiendsmith does work pretty well. I do want to see what funky stuff you can do with the Gear Gaunt plays though, so if anyone has any ideas, let me know it in the comments. I really want to look for some, also with the Clockwork Knight combos. But of course, for every strength there's at least one weakness, and I'm only going to list a few of them here because there's so many weaknesses in this deck. Starting off, the reliance on the synchro mechanic is, of course, the #1 problem. Konami should have learned by now, especially by 2020, that specifically relying on your opponent playing something is bad. And the thing that makes Goblin Bikers great is that the gimmick allows it to not only detach from opponent's fields to make an Xyz matchup even easier, but it's still playable on its own feet as a solid archetype by using its own Xyz monsters. Meklord isn't that. It becomes barely playable if your opponent is on a synchro deck, and if not, half your effects, if not more, are completely dead. Speaking of half your stuff just being dead, there's very few cards actually worth playing in the entire archetype, as you can see. The old cards are mostly just forced into being summonable for free off Obligato, or even off the core, as opposed to their actual effects for the most part. Like, Wyzel is only good due to Spell Negate being some form of disruption, and Grinnell is a pretty niche beater, but decently playable. But basically, even with a few actual Meklord cards in the deck, most of them are bricks. And finally, Triskelion seems like their win condition, but sometimes it's hard to even get out. Like, that one game where it took me like ages, I think it was the Ryziel Heraldic matchup, it took me ages to get the Triskelion on board. It wasn't because I didn't want to, I'm pretty sure I just straight up couldn't. I only had 2 Meklords in the graveyard at the time, which was really bad. Sure, it's searchable, it technically requires an extra way to get a body into the grave off the main core combo to actually get itself on board, and on top of that, he's not even a great win con. He can get kinda big, and if you're really lucky, can triple swing on exactly monsters, but that's literally it. No protection, no disruption, no removal besides battle, just punch and pray, especially since core prevents you from attacking with anything else that turn. So how are we making the deck better? I'll show you a way to make the deck better. Nah, jokes aside, firstly, I want to see an easier way of swarming that isn't the Emperor's. Opening Core and Obligato sucks since there's no way to get access to both despite being very good normal summons individually, so anything that gives you an extra normal summon while accessing both your dudes, or even just special summons a dude, wouldn't be like completely hated. And speaking of swarming, we need better targets for both Obligato and Core. More so the former since Wyzel is still a fine card and Grinnell isn't the worst, but the Meklord armies as they stand suck big time. And a continuous or field spell with some kind of good effect that also benefits from being popped would be really cool, so that we have another core target and something for assembly to actually pop on your field more frequently. Specifically, I'm thinking a card that entirely reworks the concept while on field, changing how the archetype functions a la Malefic. Meklord card effects that would equip a synchro monster in the opponent's possession can be equipped from your extra deck instead. Basically what I'm saying is that this archetype has a gimmick that is so bad that they need to go for the Malefic route and completely change how the effect works. We'll see Malefic territory. The Malefic monster effect, there can only be one face-up Malefic monster in the field, becomes there can only be one face-up Malefic monster in the field with the same name. They have to backpedal on the way this archetype functions because as it stands, unless they give them an entirely new wave of support that invalidates 99% of the old cards and all their effects and stuff, and then completely makes new things that are different, then they just need a card like a continuous spell or a field spell that says after this card's activated for this turn or whatever, or maybe even like while it's on the field, or like if it's, I don't know, something like that. Maybe even in the grave, you can banish it after it's popped or something to make it to where you can equip from your extra deck, so you don't have to rely on your opponent, but you can still get access to your extra effects. Being able to go for a Triskelion that can attack 3 times with a very large body due to, like, I don't know, what's the biggest guy, like Blazar, Quasar, or something like that, some sort of Red Dragon Archfiend, making him 8k that can attack 3 times. A Granel that can not only be 4k, but plus whatever you equip, making it a massive beater. Things like Wizel being a massive beater and having a spell negate. All of that would be really cool, and I don't think it'd be too strong because the archetype itself is already kind of but they're really big beaters, but they're very fragile, and so I think that would be a fair trade-off. As it stands, there's no reason to play Meklord over any other OTK archetype, even machine-based. Between Cyber Dragon and even Ancient Gear, Meklord just kind of falls on the back foot and into the shadows as like a really, really bad like anime deck that a lot of people even forgot got support. I actually forgot it got support until I was scrolling through my EDO list looking for additional things to put in the poll because I didn't get any results on my Patreon poll. So I was just like, yeah, let me find something random. Oh yeah, Meklord, I guess. And y'all wanted me to choose it, I guess, and it probably sparked people's gears into turning like, oh yeah, this is a deck, huh? And I wouldn't hate if it got, like, good support, but I guess I also wouldn't really hate if it kind of stayed the same, because this is one of the only Sleeper Sunday decks where I just didn't really have any strong attachment. The most fun I had was using the Fiendsmith cards because I really like the Fiendsmith engine, and the rest of the archetype was just kind of I mean, Galaxy was a lot of fun in comparison last month, but this one just wasn't it, guys. But I don't know, that's just my opinion. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, because that's gonna do it for the video. If you liked it, please sure to leave a like, as it helps put this video and the channel into the YouTube recommended. And if you like this content or somewhere like it, like the rest of my Sleeper Sunday series, then perhaps consider subscribing and turning on notifications if you haven't already, because support your channel or anything else, and it's absolutely free. Also, in this for me directly get some awesome perks in the process. Check out my Patreon down below and see what you can get for my $1 and $5 tiers, such as early video access to all my PNGs, and of course being able to choose what decks go in the Sleeper Sunday polls, so that I either don't have to play shitty decks like this, or you can have me play even shittier decks. But once again, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. This is Aurora, signing off.